And welcome to EV Marketplace. Yes, on a Thursday night tonight for a very special episode, we're bringing to you about the used EV sales report, the sales figures for 2025. This is a used EV marketplace show. We're normally about the deals, the data, and the discovery. This week, tonight in particular, we are delving straight into the data because we've just got a whole bunch of data that's come to us about the full sales picture for the used car market and the used EV market for 2025. Plus, we've got some data from Pickles. They're bringing us a whole lot of information about the way they're traveling, and then some more insights on customer intentions as well. So we're just going to slow the tone down tonight because we've got a lot to go through. If you're into DV data and you like to know the numbers, we're going to dig pretty deep tonight. And all this, of course, is brought to you by AmazingEV, our very own dedicated used EV marketplace. Check out the QR code just above me. If you're buying, check out the range there. There's some fantastic cars. If you're selling, there's a link down below. You can list for free if you're watching tonight. If you're watching, thanks for joining us. If you're catching up later on Facebook or YouTube, thanks. We really appreciate your support because this one's a special one. It sets the platform for what's to come. We continue to give you monthly updates. This data fascinates me, and not much is said about the used car market in Australia. Not a lot's known. Now that we've got a used EV market, I'm fascinated to see how much attention is, what we can place on it to really promote the used EV in Australia. That's what we're here for. So part of that's bringing you the data, bringing the information about the used EV market. So let's dive straight into it because we've got a couple of headlines that we're very excited about. Very interesting the way this is unfolding. This is the headline numbers here, and the survey number. The survey headlines tell us used BEV battery electric vehicle demand strengthens and market liquidity improves. Two key indicators that they've summarised that we're looking for as well. But dive into the numbers, and we are looking at the used car market only, sales of the used car for 2025. The yellow band indicates just the battery electric vehicles. They're the ones we're looking at. I've got the blue glasses on. We must be getting serious now. We are so excited because you can see a 64% increase up to 33,610 pure electric vehicles sold in Australia, conservatively at least using this methodology, a 64% increase over the previous year. A fantastically healthy gain. And yes, I know you're telling me it's off a very low base. And yes, it's a minuscule number compared to the totals there. Up the top there, we can see 2025 on the left, 2024 on the right. Total used car sales, 2.3 million, pretty stable. In fact, incredibly stable between 24 and 25. Clearly, there's a massive market, a lot of catching up to do, but hey, the race is on, and it is a race, and we've started in earnest. We expect these numbers on the EV side to really increase dramatically in the next 12 months now. As you can see, that number is around about 1.5% of the total. So there's a long way to go with new cars, new EVs running at 8 to 10%. Yeah, we're expecting that'll take a few years to catch up, but that's our target, that's our aim. Get to at least 50,000, 100,000 per year. That's what we're building our business on the back of, and that's where we expect to go. Great to see this as a headline number to start off with. Great to see this number really improving, and there's other validation of this as well, and we'll have a closer look. Of course, you want to know what the makes are, what makes comprise the top 10 at least. And it's no surprise that Tesla, at 32% of market share for 2025, is a massive improver in terms of numbers. Their sales are up 122%. Again, we're just talking used market, not to be confused with the new car market. Tesla's sales on the used side of things were up to 122%. Clearly, they were one of the first in. They comprise probably 40 or 50% of the whole market in terms of cars. Great to see some of the others catching up, though, because Tesla's, again, probably 40, 50% of the 300,000 cars, pure electric cars on the road. Great to see other models catching up. And maybe the surprise there is number two, BMW, 9.5%. The sleeper here, BMW sold 25%. pure EVs. You might have heard me say that before. Much without any fanfare, much higher than expected. So they're creeping up the sales charts again, a fair way behind. They doubled the number of used EVs they sold on the open market. MG, as you'd expect, they've been up there with the MG4 and the ZS EV. Very popular, not surprising that they're in third. But again, Kia coming in pretty quickly behind there as well. They've had EV6 and a couple of others, so interesting to see them jumping up the charts pretty quickly. And BYD, of course, you'd expect them to probably be number one or two on the used market within a couple of years. They've just smashed it on the new car market already for January 2026. You've just got to look at the numbers, look at the trends. Tesla have had some ups and downs for sure, but BYD are coming hard, and we expect 12 months' time to be telling a very different story about BYD on this chart. It's going to be number one or number two on the all-used EV chart as well. Mercedes, surprisingly enough, Hyundai, Volvo, all the usual suspects. Maybe the emission is no Polestar there, and yeah, they're ticking along, but in pure numbers maybe. And then Nissan Leaf, I guess Nissan comprises the whole Nissan Leaf comprises the whole Nissan market. So down on numbers there, they were a big part of this used EV market for a long, long time, but sort of getting left, as you might have saw last night with Graham. We're 100% keen to list and attract any Nissan Leaf buyer or seller. Nissan Leafs also list for free. Happy to support those cheaper cars and keep them on the road. Battery changes are possible with companies like Graham's, Oz Electrics. So we're all for keeping these cars on the road as long as possible. But by the sheer weight of numbers now, Tesla and BYD are going to rise to the top and stay there for some time. By actual model, again, it gets even more interesting. Model 3 has been the mainstay of the used EV market and continues to be. Still, it is expected number one. Big increase in numbers, though. Still a huge increase in that, but dwarfed in terms of percentage increase by the Model Y. Just that's been probably the hardest driving vehicle on the second-hand market in the last 6 months we've seen, particularly with the upgrade to the new Model Y. And so that's been a real catalyst. You can see the sales numbers on I think I saw them on the Driven this afternoon from yesterday on the new car, and you can see the Tesla falling away a bit. Plenty of great deals to be had on the used market. We're excited by this. And coming at number 3 again, the MG4, that's keeping up along with the ZS EV, keeping up the MG side of the bargain. Atto 3, again, very popular. People seem to be hanging on to those for a bit longer. Kia EV5, I think that's a very interesting one. Again, I might question that, whether that's comprises a few demos. It just hasn't been on the market that long to have that many sold on the used market. iX1s, Leafs again, ZS, MG ZS down the bottom there. But again, strong numbers. So that's what your top 10 looks like for used EVs. Hot day in Sydney today. We can feel it, and love a bit of summer though, no doubt about that. So that's what the top 10 looks like on the EV side, the top 10 models. And maybe now you're asking, well, what is the rest of the market? What does the rest of the used car market look like? And I've put these up as small as I could possibly can, because by make and by model, because again, there's no surprises here. Some of the ones you'd expect on the new car market filter through to the used car market. Perhaps one of the surprises in models is the brand loyalty to Holden and the longevity of Holden at number 8 on the makes, because they're still the 8th highest selling used car on the used car market. Once again, this is all traditional makes and models for the entire 2.1 million used cars on the road. No predominant EV manufacturers, none of the new ones there, just too soon. But I wanted to give you a picture of what that looked like for now, because that's going to form the basis of years to come to look back and go, this is what it looked like way back when, and look how we've changed from now. That gives you a snapshot of what that market looks like. And now strap yourselves in, because we're going to go down a bit deeper to have a look at some more focused data on what's actually going on, because the data we're lucky enough to get is from a company called AutoGrab. And again, I'm not sponsored by AutoGrab. We're not affiliated. They don't sponsor this show, but they've been the go-to guys for my used car data for the last few years now, since we've been following the market. They do an exclusive survey, and the survey that you're looking at now, the data from, is on the AADA's, the Australian Automotive Dealers Association's website. The links are in the description down below. Have a look there. You can get it. It's not free, and I don't subscribe to it. It's just really nice that they do a nice carve out and a disproportionately high carve out of EV data, and always have, which really helps me put these reports together with just the overall summary, because the AADA is the exclusive client for this report. The document offers an in-depth analysis of market trends, fluctuations, consumer preferences as a reliable source for dealers and investors. So it's going to all points around the globe. And AutoGrab, you may or may not have heard of as a company. They've just raised another 80 odd million. You might have seen in the news, putting them a valuation of 230 million. These are the two guys that are the principals. I do not know them. I do not have any association. We've certainly had some conversations with some guys, great guys, about what they do and what they provide. And this is AutoGrab, and they're providing data by skimming, using AI tools, I assume, all the marketplaces, obviously predominantly car sales, but others like Marketplace, Facebook Marketplace, and what have you, to get the data about the cars, the number of cars for sale, and how much they're selling for, and then how long they're on the market for and what they're sold for. So they can compile all this data, and they've got clients in Australia, insurance companies, dealer groups, manufacturers, even the OEMs themselves are collecting this data to see what the trends are. And we get a snapshot of this, which gives us our picture of the used EV market here in Australia. So that's great. Without this sort of data, I wouldn't know where to turn. So this is our reference point. We're looking at the annual report for 2025, the EIR report, and then it comes out monthly. So very soon we'll have January's report to continue this trend of giving a monthly update of the used sales numbers. Important to me to keep track of it, so we just know what we're dealing with in terms of our targets as a business to build an EV marketplace, and also to let you know maybe some of the better times of the year to list, some of the trends in terms of the seasons, what sort of cars are selling, what aren't. It's going to give us all sorts of information. Hopefully we're going to keep bringing that to you. So this is the source. They also, not to be confused with Car Source, which shout out to you guys as well. Love that channel. This is the source of our data, and also a very handy tool, which I've used before and I've recommended to anyone who's looking for a comparative price. And they call it Value My Car. It's a website, valuemycar.com.au. Check it out. There's a link down below as well for that, because you can simply put in your car details, and I'll put in mine shortly, and you can get a comparative view of what the other cars, similar conditions, similar cars around the country that are listed on the other website and the other marketplaces. You can get a direct comparison to help you, give you a price guide of what people are trying to sell or what they've listed for. It's not the sale price, but it's also going to give you what the trade price, the real hard truth of perhaps what the real wholesale price is if you went to one of those sell now organizations, because used EVs and used cars are very highly sought after. It's a very traded commodity amongst the industry. Good ones they pay money for. They've got a car buying service here as well to help find used cars. There's a lot going on to help source new cars for dealers outside the private market. And it might have interested you if we flick back to that screen there, 50-50 roughly, probably surprising to some people in 2025, 50-50 between private sellers roughly and dealer sales. Perhaps you might think it might be a bit more one way or the other. You might have a view, but sometimes there tends to be more listings from dealers, but private sellers get quicker clearance, and so it all ends out, and it's been around about 50% either way. And that's what it traditionally has been as well. That's the sort of picture that we see. If you're looking to get an indication, I use a site all the time. I send it out. There's no obligation. You don't have to pay for it. If I put my details in my 22 EV, if you've seen it around, a Tesla Model Y, I search it there. And with the wonders of modern science, it comes up and identifies exactly what the make, model, and year and type. Now, don't be surprised by this. all the data, every time you've sold a car, goes into a national database, and that gets run by the government, as I understand, but that gets sold out to other third parties, and who are able to collect it and use it as a tool like this, whether it's on a car sales listing site, to auto-populate all those details right down to the how many window wipers you've got, windscreen wipers you've got, front and back. Every detail they can pick up from the VIN and from the registration. So don't be surprised about invasions of privacy, because this is out there and it's being resold, and every car is known to everybody about exactly what it looks like. That helps them develop some pretty useful valuation tools, and this by no means is the only one. There's lots of others. There's the old Red Book and a few others that lots of people rely on. This is just a little bit different in it's dynamic data. It's using the data that's on those websites right now. If you changed a listing, drop the price, it would change with you, and you could see it almost immediately. So it's, instead of populating once a month about what a valuation or expected valuation of a car is, this is dynamic. It's taking that data as it's updated and it's downloading it. If we put in some basic details, around about 100,000 Ks I've done, they're pretty optimistic about getting to 500 for any 1,000 cars. Interesting scale there. If I put very good, it's not excellent. Next, my details. And you put some basic details in there, because they will email you a copy. And I'm happy to put mine in there. Roscoe. I'll put my phone number 044148. Anybody can ring me. That's my other number. I've got two numbers. That's the business number. Roscoe, you all know me, so you can contact me. I've got no problems. AmazingEV. And postcode 2000, New South Wales. Just answer no to all these questions, because this is where they're looking to stock more cars and look to see if you're actually interested in selling your car. So I say no. They are looking to cross-sell services out of this. Don't get me wrong. There's no free lunch. As much as I love AutoGrab, we all know what they're doing. Generate valuation. They'll send you an email, but we'll get this here shortly. And again, it can be a bit of a shock as to because the trade price comes up first, but then it will give us very similar cars around the country. The trade price on the Model Y 2022, 32,139. If you're walking to a dealer, that's probably what they'd offer you for trade. One of those car buying services might go to that following another inspection. But then, this is the best part, all those other cars, similarly spec'd, similar years, similar Ks, and a bit of variation up and down. The codes on the right-hand side are where they're listed. Car sales is clearly car sales. And that's picked them up from all these sites and gives you a very clear indication of what people are asking for retail. So you can see the wholesale price there, 32, and then retail looks like somewhere around about 45. Probably you'd do a deal probably around about 40. No one's done as many Ks as I have on this schedule. There's a lot of very low mileage Model Ys there. Incredible range. Again, no one's done probably as many as 100. So mine, I'm probably high, not high 30s. Great tool. That's one of the tools in AutoGrab's arsenal. Thought I'd show you that as well, because you can use that. Links down below in the description for a valuation on your car, just to give you an indication. I'd say a price guide, not a valuation. I like it and I use it all the time. I recommend that. Of course, digging a bit deeper now, and we're going to go down to the next level in AutoGrab's data, and that's the depreciation and the day's sale. The two major other key indicators about the state of the market that get bandied around with other people's, and we're going to focus on those as well. So the pure numbers, the pure volume, the increase, but depreciation you're all probably most interested in, and then the day's sale. And that's described, we'll start with day's sale, measures to the duration in days between when a vehicle was first listed online to when it was delisted. So delisted usually means that they have sold it rather than actually withdrawn it from market. So that's days to sell, and that's a very good indicator. Clearly, the longer it takes, the slower the market. And if there's a slowing market, perhaps there's an imbalance, or usually an imbalance between the price that is they're trying to offer it for, and what buyers are willing to pay. So something's got to give. You can't say for sure whether the prices are going to drop or demand's going to increase. There's a whole lot of other seasonal factors and other factors involved about supply, the sheer number on the market as well, which it doesn't take into account. But they do, and the industry does track this days sale very closely, or days sale very closely. We track it as well because it's a very good indicator. If the market feels like it's slowing down, normally the days sale will increase as well. And we have noticed that, and we'll look at a couple of trends here. Very important one to keep an eye on, and we'll be keeping track of that as well. Days sale, again, let's get down to the detail because this one's a bit of a complicated one. And here and this is just pure EVs. We're not looking at the rest of the market now. The glasses are on, so I can see. You look close as well. Now, there's 2 years. They're comparing 2025 in the dark blue and 2024 in the purple. I see purple, light purple, maybe jacaranda-ish. Anyway, that's looking at 1-year-old cars on the left, 2-year-old cars in the middle, and 3-year-old cars on the right. And then it tracks the prices, tracks the days, the weighted average days to sell through the course of the year. Now, if we look at the blue line for 2025 across all those age groups of cars, the interesting thing is the start of the year, it definitely took a little bit longer to sell. Probably without drawing any conclusions about what's going to happen this year, it seemed to take longer to sell in January. Not surprising, with a bit of holiday overlay, sort of hangover, everyone getting ready, coming back from holidays, getting back to school. But then generally, whether it was 1 or 2, particularly in 2-year-old cars, especially in 3-year-old cars, as the months rolled on, February, March, the wheels started to get cranked up again, and the day sale dropped dramatically from 60-odd, 88 down to 60-odd for 1-year-old cars. And so clearly there was a lot of action in the pricing, and in 2025, as in the first quarter, day sale dropped dramatically down to under 40 days to sell. On average, 40 days to sell a 2-year-old or 3-year-old battery electric vehicle. Various trends there compared to 2024. I'm not going to follow too much. A bit of a correlation. What we had noticed toward the end of the last year, 2025, the last 2 or 3 months, things did seem to slow down a bit. Just had that feeling things weren't moving as quick as they should have. I was following the monthly data, and sure enough, over the last 3 months of last year, we had that trend where things were slowing down again. So probably have expected a slowish month in January. We'll see what happens when the report comes out. You get some different peaks and troughs, but it appears that the next 2 months, February and March, are peak times based on the number of days it's going to take you, on average, to sell a 2 or 3-year-old battery electric vehicle. That is something we'll follow very closely. Of course, you want to compare that to the normal market, the normal ICE cars as well. You can't go without comparing it. Again, I don't want to do too much work on the ICE car market, but similar sort of trend. Again, we'll just take 2025, the blue line. They've split it up differently here. They haven't done the ICE car market summary by age of car. They've done it by dealers and by private sellers, which is not really comparing like for like from an economist or a data follower's perspective. But anyway, we'll mix our metaphors anyway. As you can see, let's take the private sellers again. That seemed to slow down in 2025. Day sale went up on private, which was the complete opposite from what happened on the EV market. So for an ICE car, January was a good month, but it slowed down. And when I say ICE car, looking at the entire market of diesel cars, petrol cars, the 98% of the market we're not looking at, including plug-in hybrids. And that was the opposite from the EV market. Day sale went up fractionally, so it took a little bit longer. Then it gradually dropped down again, and the best month looks like to sell a car on average was in August, September last year. Same for dealers. They had an outstanding month in September last year. That was way down to 45 now. Pretty exaggerated scale on this. We're only moving 10 days between peak and trough. But so it's a pretty exaggerated chart. Makes the point, though. There are better times historically and there hasn't been a correlation between the ICE car market generally and the BEV market. So interesting. We'll be following this closely because the comparison is interesting, and I do not know. Well, we do not know what the factors are that are causing this differentiation at the moment. Perhaps we'll see that come to the floor for a bit later on, but we'll start to see exactly what is causing the differences. But at the moment, hard to say, but I can show you there are distinct differences. 2024 had a different story altogether, completely different. But we'll just try and compare 2025 with 2025, going back to those BEVs, 1 year old, 2 year old, 3 year olds. Again, the clearance rates outright, if you do take them on an outright number and someone says to you it's going to take longer to sell an EV, here's the number for the broader market. Forget about the peaks and the troughs and the better and the seasonality. The year ended on an average of probably for the broader market of about 50 days to sell in dealers, and probably on average about 42, 43 days to sell for private. Call that 40 on average, 42 on average. Let's go back to the BEV market, the battery electric market, and for 2 and 3 year old cars, almost exactly the same. So this data suggests to me, without going too deep, that the days sale is almost exactly the same for battery electric and for the broader market. We're seeing around about 40, 41 for 3 year old cars, definitely a spike up on the newer ones. And again, not surprising because so much competition there in the new car market, where a lot of those models hit the market in the last 6 months. Orders went out, some fantastic deals. I wouldn't blame you. You've got a choice to make. But at the 2 and 3 year old level, when you got the choice of a $35,000, $40,000 used EV versus a new one, even some of the new EVs that have come, the choice has often been, and that's reflected in the day's sale. Not surprising that the 1 year old car day sale spiked up at the end of last year. That some of those new models were just so attractive, it was impossible to ignore. No one would have ignored it. So trying to sell a 1 year old EV into that market, definitely a little bit harder. But again, 56, they were selling on average, just took another, 2 weeks on average. But deals got done, price meets demand. So that's interesting. We compared the days to sell for the whole market versus the EV market, and some very interesting conclusions coming out of that. Moving now to the retained value, of course, the one that you want to have a look at. I'm going to have a drink before I move into that. Depreciation, retained value, RV. Same sort of thing. Retained value is what the industry uses. Clearly, the percentage of the price compared to what the price at new was is how they calculate and how they demonstrate retained value here. So for RV, or retained value or depreciation, is 30%. It doesn't mean it's depreciated by 30%. It means the value is 30% of the price at when it was new. So let's get into it. Here's the whole market, just to give you an idea to start with. We'll do it in reverse this time. There's the entire used car market, residual values. Again, 2025 in the dark blue, 2024. We'll focus on 2025. A quick comparison, 2024 was still the hangover from COVID. Prices were incredibly high. They tend to drop off as the year goes by, as the cars get older. But 2024, still 71% on average of all used cars. Again, without looking at any particular age group, the weighted average was, so it's a very simplistic, it takes into account, doesn't take into account the actual age at all, but a very simplistic chart, overly simplistic perhaps. But to give you an idea, the whole market in 2025 on average ended up at 63%, exactly what it did in the end of 2024. So by the end of December last year, the average residual value of a used car in Australia on average, and these numbers on AutoGrab, I might qualify, go back only 10 years. It's not looking at cars older than 10 years or write-offs. They're just looking at cars up to 10 years old. So perhaps a bit limited, but given that the average life of a used car in Australia is only 11.6 years, you can Google that if you like. Um, that's a reasonable sample, but 63. So, of course, you can't wait to see what the residual value of the EV market looks like. And here they have broken it down to 1, 2, and 3-year-old cars again in the dark blue for 2025, and we'll focus on that. And again, 1-year-old cars, it's very hard to compare it. So we'll try and chuck an average together because the EV market's very young. It's not a fair comparison, but we'll chuck an average together of those 3 blue lines and try and get a picture of what an average 3-year-old car, or what an average EV looks like. 77, 61, 56 looks like an average of 61, roughly to me. Residual value on average-ish of a used EV, go back, have a look at the market in general, 63.1%. EVs on average 61%. Okay, so yes, fractionally less, but not a huge difference, right? It's around about exactly the same. Yes, some of them are exceptional. Some of the new ones are, and again, we don't have the 1-year data for the whole market. I'm not going to try and compare 1, 2, and 3 with the whole market. Yes, there are some really tough deals being done out there. 3-year-old cars, perhaps at 55, is less. I don't have the data. On average, it's around about the same or just a fraction less, not significantly lower. So enough said on that. We're going to have a look at these and track them monthly now. This is a snapshot of the last 2 years. Great to see that perhaps what's going on, and argue, comment, by all means, let me know, because we're going to go into this every month now and dig deeper. I like these numbers. I love to look at them. It gives us the platform, like any business, to substantiate exactly where the market's going, what the growth looks like, and just to see, when we're talking to people, it gives them some assurance about what they can expect. Not a valuation per se, but some expectations about helping people understand where their car might be priced. Perhaps there are better times to list and sell. Perhaps there is going to be more demand at other times. As we track this number, the patterns will clearly come out, and we'll start to see, because this market is really young at the moment. And so we're taking the snapshot data. We're not drawing huge conclusions from it, but we're really encouraged by what we see. So it makes me happy. And then it also makes me happy to go and have another closer look at some of what you might call some competitive other markets out there, like Pickles auction site, who are all in on EVs. You've heard us talk about them before. We're happy to have a look at their listings. All their EV listings are with one of the battery test certificates on the site. They also put out a quarterly report, which was hot off the press this afternoon, which I thought, let's chuck this in as well, because some really informative insights from Pickles as well. They're taking this seriously. They're trying to appeal to the retail buyer as well. Look, a certain percentage of people are going to look at the retail market and say, hey, are going to look at the auction market and say, hey, that's, for me, that's going to be a bargain. Look, lots of others aren't. We appreciate wherever you buy a car from, fantastic, but they're trying to appeal to the EV private buyer as well. And that's great for us as an EV market. The more people that are in this market, the better, as far as I'm concerned. The more they promote, they're also, their mainstay is fleet vehicles coming, need to be disposed of as quickly as possible. They can't wait the 45 days or the 35 days for sale. They need to dispose of next week. They need to get that money back in the bank. They need to get it recycled. The cost of the dollar is more important to them. And so they're feeding the dealer market predominantly. That battery certificate, the second picture on the image of every Pickles car forms the basis of their listing, and it gives a really clear indication of exactly what the battery health is. But from that, they've tested over 800 cars now. So this report is not only about some data about sales, it's also some fascinating insights, which I'm going to go into shortly, that I discovered that I'm going to bring to you as well, because I think extraordinary when you start to look at some things and get some patterns going. They, of course, another shout out for Test EV. Again, we're not being sponsored by Nathan and Test EV. We work closely with them, but Pickles are working with Avalu and Test EV and they are testing every single car. It's provided support for the dealers to get back into the used EV market. It's provided confidence for private buyers, and it helps us because another great source of data. Some great insights down there about seasonality of sales. They can see as their auction flow goes through. Again, Australian climate may deliver healthier EV batteries than global expectations. Now, this is quite incredible. Again, very small sample, but perhaps the Australian market with our battery testing and our battery health is doing better, maybe because of the better dry weather. Notwithstanding the incredible floods and storms we have had, and the wet weather and rain, weather is off the books on this channel. But I get what they're saying in general, in the general Aussie climate. Just want to dive in and show you what Pickles have recorded as well. Again, small numbers, but they are dedicated and focused, and they are carving out in their reports, quarterly report, automotive report, they're carving out a disproportionately high niche in the used EV space. So helps us because if they're growing, we can see the growth as well. And they're excited because they've sold 1,000 vehicles in 2025, 35 million in sales. And a lot of that's come out of fleet management programs. And of course, that's going to be the big growth driver everyone's been talking about is the fleet sale, the vehicles coming off fleet. We might try and find someone from the fleet industry. If anyone's watching from the fleet world, I'd love to talk to someone and get them on the show, because we'd like to help some people make the right decision about what happens when a vehicle comes off a novated lease, whether they have the choice to sell it themselves, what their options are, and whether we can't help them prepare for sale before it comes off the lease and not wait for the last moment until they're desperate. Or if that is the case with any owners who are responsible for sale at the end of a lease. But look, all of these contracts are different. They've got multiple permutations. But love to chat to someone, have them on, talk about how we can help promote that and sell more cars before it gets to auction or before it gets to the end of the lease. And the key to their growth, as we said, is the battery state of health testing. Can't stress this enough. Big corporation, they took it on board, they backed it, they put it in their report. Average state of health tested across 800 cars, 96%. This is turning out to be a lot better than expected. I know there's a lot of battery stories. I know there's replacements to be made. I know there's faults. But on average, this is turning out to be far better. And it might turn out that the battery could be the least of our worries over the course of the life of these EVs. Battery transparency has fundamentally changed how buyers assess EVs. It's helped remove uncertainty and brought a much broader audience into used EV markets, says Ronald, who's CEO, I think, or Chief Sales. I'm sorry, I do not know Ronald's title, but thank you for using their data. I did not ask. I saw it. Again, you can find it on the Pickles auction site. There's a link down below. Again, fascinating that they have chosen particularly to draw some conclusions, which I perhaps wouldn't have gone to so quickly. But again, this is an interesting one about DC charging versus AC charging. And that because they've tested 1,500 EVs already that have gone through, not just in 2025, but in 2024 as well. Even vehicles with more than 120,000 Ks have retained 90%. They've drawn some strong conclusions from this, from the data, because the data can pick up how the electrons got into the car, whether it was AC or DC. That data gets shown out in the testing as well. The long-running myth in the purple, the DC charging myth, a long-running myth suggests that too much DC charging will prematurely degrade an EV battery. This one's for you, Mrs. Amazing. We had the conversation first thing the other morning, as soon as I woke up. It says, does DC charging affect a battery more than AC? So I went out of my way to find this for Mrs. Amazing. And here it is from Pickles, who just emailed me this afternoon. From a sample of below more than 800 cars, in this case, just although they've tested 1,500, the sample was 800. So let's go with that. Comparing DC versus AC, what this means, in other words, jump to the bottom. Heavy reliance on DC fast charging does not mean meaningfully impact battery longevity in the real world. That chart plots DC charging ratio with average battery health. And so, again, not a major major discrepancy between AC and DC. So, look, I'm not backing either team here. If you've got your theories, stay with them. I've got mine. I've been DC charging 90% of the time. Haven't done a battery health test yet. I must do one. I'll get Nathan down here one day and we'll do one, and I'll let you know exactly what's going on. So Hal says, and thanks for joining me, Hal. I really appreciate your support. Hal says, Kias are a big part of EV fleet sales. There are only a few EV brands on the New South Wales government fleet list. So yeah, we're going to see some more, perhaps some of the Kias that were going through last year and a hell of a lot more this year. Look forward to a lot more Kias coming out. And again, Dave had his EV6 last night. He's done 140,000 Ks already. And that's car's only 3 or 4 years old. So 3.5. Love the Kia. And Sarah bought a Kia EV3. Love the Kias. We took a Kia EV9 out down to Currarong and had a weekend away. And yeah, that was like sitting in business class in the back seat. This is amazing. Love that. So love the Kias. Interestingly enough, this is a broader one about their general auction business. And it's auction, not auction. Anyway, I'm from New Zealand. I say auction. Affordability continues to shape demand. This is a key factor we've been talking about the used EV market. And everyone talks about affordability and what that means, getting more affordable cars. But that's important at the new level, but it's also important at the used car level as well. Because unless, in our minds, a car is between $25,000 and $35,000, you're going to make the stretch. You're going to push for the extra $50 a week to try and jump into that new car deal through a novated lease. By the way, you can novated lease used EVs as well, as long as they are, and they get the FBT exemption, as long as they are built after the introduction of the legislation, mid 2022. I think that's the one they're talking about getting rid of, I think now. But anyway, you can novated lease a used EV. You can get the benefits out of it if it's new enough. But this is the story that, in summary, from Pickles that they've picked up on as well. This is an index. This is not absolute values. This is a starting point of 2020 something, beginning of 2020. They've indexed the recommended retail prices of cars. And what this is really trying to say is that cars under 30,000 in the line and above have proved to be the most popular in terms of number sold. So the index doesn't refer to the price. Index here refers to the number they are selling, the popularity. Look, this is anecdotal. This is common sense, but here's a chart to prove it. And they talk about it in terms of flight to value under 30,000. That's the sweet spot for us for used EVs as well. We think when we get between 25 and 30, they're going to be on par with petrol cars. There's going to be a lot more action in the used market as well. And we're already starting to see a lot of attractive cars, Model 3s in that range as well. And that this vindicates what we believe about the nature of the broader used car market, that often you are going to buy a used car because you can only afford a car under 30. And that's absolute common sense. It might be a second car. It might be you just simply don't want to buy another, or you don't want to spend that sort of money. That's where the used market comes, and that's where we think we're going to start to kick along. That's when AmazingEV is getting prepared for a lot more cars in that space, and we're excited by that. And this sort of chart just vindicates that sort of theory, and that according to Pickles, the sub 30,000 K is where they get more action for 30% more sales than cars that are more expensive. They are charting exactly what we believe. And thanks, Pickles, they don't know we're using it. Again, public information, the links are down below, a lot of good data there. Happy to support anyone selling a used EV. Helps us build our market, helps build the market in general. So we'll look more detail about the different markets, Facebook Marketplace, other marketplaces as well, which I can't actually say out loud. But we'll look at them because they formed the core of the market, and we're trying to build off that to learn what we need to do to work with customers to try and sell cars faster and get a better result and get more EV eyes on the prize. I've got one bit of data. I'm going to keep going because I'm on a roll now. Again, a very interesting report that came out of the AADA. They commissioned this report. Again, it's on the AADA website from Zing Insights. No affiliation with the AADA. We're not members. We're not a licensed dealer. Disclaimers, disclaimers, disclaimers. The research objectives were to update our understanding of beliefs and perspectives on EVs and hybrid vehicles among Australian vehicle drivers. So the AADA, who have some very broad summaries in their monthly updates about the broader market, have, what I can say is, not been entirely supportive, in my view, of the broader EV marketplace. Perhaps that's reading the result of the sales, not reflecting, perhaps they're more in touch with the dealers than I am. I can understand that. Perhaps they're not talking to the same people I'm talking to. They are the peak body. They represent the dealers. They've got to sell cars, understand. But they have still gone out of their way to do this report and this survey on the intentions of EV and hybrid vehicle. Now, we're going to focus on the EV data. A couple of quick snapshots because this is complicated but very interesting. This is a chart which they have produced, and they surveyed about 2,000 people, rural, across all age groups. There's no breakdown of the segmentation of who, but it's rural people, city people, across all demographics. 2,000's not a bad sample for a survey. 1,000 usually, but a couple of thousand, 2,500, not unreasonable. Draw whatever conclusions, draw the same ones, draw mine, have your own thoughts. I don't mind, because this is very interesting. And this is about intention for new versus used EVs. And I guess it doesn't, well, it affects us who thinks they might buy an EV next, because that's the sort of information dealers need to know to focus where they're going to buy their stock and what sort of cars to provide. As I say, they've got to make some money. This chart shows the percentage considering buying an electric vehicle for their next main vehicle. All right. And so I guess potentially they're looking at people with one or two cars, which is very common. Don't get me wrong, most of the people we know have two cars. That's the way Australian households look. And on the left, intend to buy a brand new vehicle next, and the percentage to buy a EV is 12%, down from 14%. Bit disappointing. Again, that's higher than what's actually happening at the moment. So you can be encouraged by the new market. But what we're focused on here is other vehicles, and perhaps the strange conclusion that they come to is that your second vehicle is going to be a second-hand vehicle, but perhaps they know the market, and that's something I should be listening to, that we should be focusing on the second car market. Maybe that's a clear indicator of where we should be marketing and pitching our marketing at. I always say, if you're prepared as a father to recommend to your 18-year-old daughter to buy an EV, then EVs are going to take off. Until we get to that point, I'm not so sure, but that's a litmus test. But they're telling us something here, and perhaps I should start listening. On the right, those that intend to buy a used vehicle next. Again, perhaps that's down from 18% generally. And again, we're talking about EVs, 12% down from 15%. All right. So this is a chart that those considering buying an electric vehicle only for a next main vehicle, and then on the right-hand side as intending to buy an actual used EV. All right. So, well, I think that gives us an indication that, yeah, those numbers are down again, but still a strongish demand at around 12% for those people who are looking to buy on the second-hand market. We're going to do our best, again, as a platform to try and improve that number and increase that number up. It gives me a snapshot of where the work starts and what the picture looks like at the moment based on customer intentions. Other interesting one I wanted to show you before we just about wrap up for the night. And again, thanks for joining us. I've gone way longer than I expected to. It's 7:50 and I've had a lot of fun. I've spoken and had a lot to say, but so much data here, so many trends and interesting things that I've found. This one profiles those considering an electric vehicle. And what fascinated me with, and again, we don't have the full breakdown of where those who completed the survey actually live. But this is encouraging for me on the new car market. Again, not looking at the used car market specifically, but looking at, again, they don't differentiate between new and used. Likely or very or quite likely to consider an EV for the next vehicle. So it doesn't differentiate. But look at the numbers in the main metro cities. 55 for Sydney, 44 for Melbourne, 40 for Brisbane. And household location, there were 51% of the recipients there were in inner metro areas, right? So again, disproportionate number was surveyed in the metro areas and a way disproportionate number. So when they come out with an average of sort of that the whole numbers are down of those that intend to buy an EV, as we looked at, I'm not sure if that's truly reflective of what's going on either. So look, we're encouraged by those urban numbers. The rural guys, look, get on board. It's going to happen. Some of those numbers are down about their buying intentions. Some of the states, Joe, you know where you're at in South Australia, WA, get on board, because in the metro areas, some of them where they say it's most challenging, there's charges, there's range of cars, there's choice of cars, and there's the numbers they are showing us from their surveys, the AAD themselves, that there's a high proportion, over 50% of people in the Sydney metro are looking and considering an EV. So I'm encouraged by that. I'm going to leave on that note, because whether it's a new or used EV, we are so encouraged by what is going on in the intention to buy space as well, that I can only see things going up and moving forward from here. I really appreciate you watching tonight. We've unpacked a whole heap of data. It forms a good platform for where we're going to go next, and it helps out us as a business. And maybe I'll do another one of these and take you inside our business a bit more. Look at what we've built, how we've built it, and if anyone's interested in hearing about the way AmazingEV has evolved and our story and background and behind the scenes story, we'll bring a bit more of that as well, because there's a lot, like everything goes into it. I'm Roscoe. Thanks for joining us for this special EV sales, or used EV sales report special. I've run out of breath. I'll leave you with some listings on AmazingEV at the moment. And thanks for joining us. Good night. Can we do it? It's good. Good on me. Can I talk or what?